The stock-to-flow model looks forward in time, and it gives a 2024-2028 target of an average price of about $500,000. So it's an average price for the next 4 years. What's the range we can expect? Well, the rule of thumb, the one standard deviation band, is about 2 times the 500K, which is 1 million, and 500K divided by 2, which is 250K. So we have a wide range of 250K to 1 million, where I expect the average of the 4-year price cycle to be.
Despite current price movements, popular anonymous Bitcoin analyst PlanB still firmly believes we are in a bull market and predicts higher prices and multiple new all-time highs for the leading cryptocurrency in 2025. In a recent video published on his PlanB YouTube channel, the pseudonymous analyst notes that in previous cycles, an all-time high in Bitcoin's price often led to more all-time highs shortly after. PlanB expects a repeat of this in 2025 and predicts we will see many months with new all-time highs for Bitcoin, similar to previous bull markets. In his video, PlanB notes that Bitcoin's Relative Strength Index, RSI, is currently at 73, a level in the yellow-orange zone, and only slightly lower than November's RSI of 75, but still well above 50, indicating an uptrend. A move past this zone takes us into the red zone, which typically signals a strong bullish phase. PlanB expects this in 2025, as well as the steep upward price movements we saw during the fear of missing out phase in previous bull markets. In his words, 2025 is likely to feature many months with an RSI of 80+ and several red dots on the RSI chart, consistent with past cycles. In the video, PlanB also reiterates the stock-to-flow target of $250,000 to $1 million for this cycle, adding that he expects the cycle's peak to be anywhere within this bandwidth. As we bring you clips from PlanB's video, please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos. Thanks for the support, and enjoy the video.
The next one, realized price, is where all the action is. This is a very important insight. So the realized price is the cost base of Bitcoin that moved on-chain, so not on exchanges, but on-chain transactions. The average price of Bitcoins that moved on-chain in a certain period. And I'll look at the 2-year period. You can look at the whole period, which is the realized price. You can look at the 2-year period or any other period. A shorter period, 5 months, is the short-term hodler price. I like the 2-year period. That's the gray line. It's 71 at the moment. November it was 64. So the realized price is increasing sharply. You can see that in this line as well. It goes up. And that's the sign of a bull market. In bear markets, the gray line is flat. But in bull markets, it shoots up. And then there's a bear market, it will be flat, and then in a bull market it shoots up. Every time in a bull market, the gray line, the realized price, goes up. And what you also see is that the gray line diverges from the black line. So the realized price diverges from the moving average. You see that in every bull market, 21, 17, 13. And again, that's the signature of a bull market. So while the monthly close in December was not an all-time high, and while the RSI is not yet 80 plus red, and while the 200-week moving average is less relevant, the realized price is pumping, and that indicates a continuation of the bull market, in my opinion.
In a recent post on social media platform X, PlanB notes that his forward guidance for this cycle has remained the same since 2022. The post includes several correct calls for this cycle, including Bitcoin's price rising into the April 20, 2024 halving, a pump after the halving, and Bitcoin hitting $100,000 in 2024. The last part of Plan B's forward guidance is the stock-to-flow target of $250,000 to $1 million for Bitcoin in 2025. The analyst also addressed some concerns and criticisms under his post. One ex-user notes that it would be almost impossible for Bitcoin's market cap to move from $2 trillion to $10 trillion in 12 months, as it would require a lot of institutional capital that simply can't be deployed fast enough, even for giants like BlackRock. Plan B's reply to the comment reads, "You don't need $8 trillion inflow to go from $2 trillion to $10 trillion market cap. You need just a fraction of $8 trillion. In another post, Plan B further clarified his stock-to-flow target range for Bitcoin in 2025, noting that Bitcoin hitting anywhere between this range instantly validates his model. The tweet reads, "In 2019, when Bitcoin was below $4,000, I predicted approximately 50,000 average for the 2020 to 2024 halving period, with a range of 25,000 to 100,000. Bitcoin's average price turned out to be 34,000, which is in range, but some people still said stock-to-flow failed. To be honest, I would settle for a 340,000 average this cycle." However, Plan B also put out a note of caution for investors. "I was wrong about 100,000 5 years ago," he began in another post. "For what it's worth, I am not 100% correct and will be wrong again in the future. My advice: don't focus on exact numbers, but on the big picture, fundamentals like diminishing returns and logic." Plan B has had several correct calls in the past, but many Bitcoiners can't move past his wrong 100,000 prediction for 2021. Do you think that call invalidates all of Plan B's predictions and his stock-to-flow model? Please share your comments and observations in the comments section below. In other news, Marathon Digital Holdings CEO Fred Thiel is just as bullish on Bitcoin and believes the leading cryptocurrency could climb as high as $200,000 in 2025. He gives his price prediction and catalysts that will bring about this price jump in a recent interview with David Lin. Here are some clips from the discussion.
So I think what you're seeing is there is no lack of demand on the sidelines. What you're seeing, though, is very prudent buyers. You had, as of a few weeks ago, every single Bitcoin in existence was in profit. When you had Bitcoin at $108,000, every single Bitcoin anybody held, no matter what price they paid for it, it was either break even or in profit. And if you think about back in August, when we did our first convert to buy Bitcoin in this year, we ended up doing 3 of them. Bitcoin was at 55,000. And here you are at 108,000. That's almost 100% profit. And so there's going to be selling pressure. So you have people towards the end of the year, they're going to sell off some of their Bitcoin holdings and potentially buy back into the market when it drops down. I think a lot of people were expecting some sort of correction post-election. It seems that, everything that the administration is saying today, tends to indicate that they're going to follow through on their commitments regarding Bitcoin and strategic reserve, et cetera. So I think what you're seeing is some opportunistic selling. And as we come around to the beginning of the year, as post-inauguration, when things start actually put in place, we'll start seeing it run again. I think the majority of the people who look at Bitcoin price are expecting a correction into the low 90s, high 80s, and then a return to growth, ending somewhere approaching 200,000 by the end of next year. I think that's a pretty valid scenario, just based on the demand that we're seeing kind of on the sidelines. If a strategic reserve is announced, that'll drive a relatively big push. If other countries start announcing reserves, again, there's a finite supply of Bitcoin, right? There are only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist. 20 million more or less have been mined. And of that, maybe 4 million are in wallets that either have keys that are lost or inaccessible for other reasons, or just won't move, 1 million of which is in the Satoshi wallet itself. So there's not a lot of Bitcoin to go around. And, if countries want to have 500,000 Bitcoin or, equivalent, 500,000 Bitcoin, you think about it, that's roughly what MicroStrategy has, right? So now you're talking roughly, $50 billion of Bitcoin. That's not a very big reserve for a country. And so you
Yeah.
start adding up those demands on supply, and it's a big number. And then you look at pension funds that want to put 1% or 2% into Bitcoin. And you see just the growth of the ETFs. The Bitcoin ETFs in 12 months have grown to have more assets under management than gold ETFs took 20 years to accumulate. Putin said at the recent BRICS meeting that he wanted the BRICS countries to be able to trade outside of the dollar system. And he mentioned Bitcoin was a good alternative, which is why you start seeing now those countries looking at Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. Donald Trump has also said that he wants the BRIC countries to continue to trade in dollars. What wasn't said is that I think there's a likelihood that you could trade in digital dollars, like Tether, for example. And I think what you'll see is stable coins take on a bigger and bigger role in payments, especially cross-border payments, because they're obviously much more efficient than the Fed. They're easier to get, easier to dispose of, et cetera. So what you'll see is some countries just starting to hold Bitcoin. You have Bhutan, which is a very small country that has a very big reserve relative to its population. El Salvador, obviously, everybody's familiar with. But now you're starting to see countries, but not just countries. You're seeing states. The state of Texas has a bill that's been submitted to the legislature to have a strategic reserve. Louisiana, I believe, also has done that. So you're now seeing more and more states looking at this as being a valid thing. You're seeing commercial banks refinancing commercial building loans where they put a strip of Bitcoin as a way to essentially balance for volatility, because from a risk-adjusted perspective, if you have 2% of Bitcoin in a portfolio or in a basket that makes up a loan, you can dramatically positively impact the return potentially, which can offset some volatility risk in the value of the underlying commercial asset that you're refinancing. So I think we're starting to really see Bitcoin come into the financial system. You're starting to see Bitcoin derivative instruments starting to happen. People like BlackRock and others are very active in building all sorts of other products on top of it. So I'm very bullish. We have a gold reserve. Why do we have a gold reserve? It's certainly not to back the US dollar, because the US dollar is not backed by gold. So we have a gold reserve as a way that we have the ability to pay for things in the event the dollar would be somehow locked out of a market or fully debased. And so why would you have a Bitcoin reserve? Well, if countries start trading using Bitcoin for international settlement, or they use it as a reserve asset, the US needs to have an ability to affect those markets. And if the US holds enough Bitcoin, they can essentially either support or have a threat of attacking a market by using Bitcoin as a strategic weapon. We have a strategic oil reserve today that was created as a response to the 1970s oil crisis and the oil embargo, as a way to protect this country from people keeping us out of getting oil. And today it's just used as a mechanism for leveling pricing in the oil markets domestically. But internationally, if we have a Bitcoin strategic reserve, we can impact Bitcoin price. We can impact people's ability to use Bitcoin. This is also why Bitcoin mining is so important. Think of Bitcoin mining as block space. You need to have block space to be able to process transactions. The more mining that exists outside the US, the more outside nations have the opportunity to block the US from putting transactions into those blocks. Right? It's kind of like airplane capacity. There are only so many seats in every block, and there's a block every 10 minutes. And if the US only has 10% of global hash rate, US transactions could only be guaranteed to be processed in 10% of the cases. Right? So it's very important for the US to have a significant amount of block space, somewhere upwards of 40%, such that no nation can lock US Bitcoin holders or investors, especially the large institutional investments that are coming into this country to invest in Bitcoin. so they can't be locked out of the market. So you have to have both the strategic reserve and a large amount of mining in the country.
Long-term Bitcoiners like PlanB and Thiel are not the only ones echoing bullish sentiments for the digital asset in 2024. According to a recent CNBC report, an analyst from H.C. Wainwright and Company, a full-service investment bank and one of America's most respected financial institutions, has forecasted an exciting year ahead for Bitcoin. Mike Colonnese attributes this optimistic outlook to the increasing clarity in cryptocurrency regulations and a growing wave of institutional adoption. Colonnese has predicted that Bitcoin could reach $225,000 by the end of 2025, citing historical price cycles, regulatory optimism, and growing adoption. Speaking with CNBC's Tanaya Machil, Colonnese shared his detailed analysis. Based on our analysis of historical price cycles and recent price action, along with the widely held expectation for a more favorable regulatory environment for the digital assets industry in the U.S., in 2025 under the new administration, the availability of spot ETF products in the U.S., and accelerating institutional investor and corporate adoption, we now estimate that Bitcoin will reach $225,000 per coin by the end of 2025. Colonnese also issued a word of caution, explaining that Bitcoin bull runs are typically marked by periods of sharp corrections, with 30% dips being par for the course. He highlighted that Bitcoin's price movements have historically been closely correlated with global liquidity, as measured by M2, which has been on a downward trend since October. Despite these potential fluctuations, Colonnese remains optimistic about Bitcoin's long-term growth prospects. Please share your thoughts on PlanB's Fred Thiel's and Mike Colonnese's predictions for Bitcoin in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and want more content like this, please take a little time to give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. You can also turn on the notifications bell so you are immediately notified whenever we post a video. Thanks for watching.